that it breaks you down where you can't be a human. You're treated subhuman.
Brad Crawford, convicted sex offender. For 13 years, he lived with the burden each and every day of being on the sex offender registry.
I have been nailed down to almost, I want to say, staying in my house all the time and not really being active and not being around friends and not doing things I always used to do.
But in a matter of days, he went from feeling like an outcast to feeling like this.
It's like I had a ton of bricks lifted off my shoulders. It was like super.
Why the change? Brad Crawford is no longer on the sex offender registry. This court order proves it.
I am very relieved to have this. My life will change for the better.
And he has his attorney, David Slane, to thank for getting him off the list.
This list should be reserved for the people who are the worst. And my intention is to make the Department of Corrections follow the law. That's why I became a lawyer. I believe people have a right to have a second chance, and I think this is giving them that.
On August 24th, 2011, David Slane won a landmark court decision. A district judge sided with two appeals court rulings saying sex offenders convicted before November 2007 could be removed from the sex offender registry.
As a result, we're able to go back into anybody whose case is before November 1st, 2007 and ask that the court not apply that law retroactively, and then we simply calculate the 10 years and we get them off the list.
That ruling immediately removed about 60 sex offenders off the registry, and it made headlines around Oklahoma.
Dozens of sex offenders may soon be taken off the sex offender registry. Good evening, I'm Jamie Soretta.
I'm Andrew Spino. That number could soon grow. Fox 25's Mark Taylor explains why court rulings are allowing convicted sex offenders to go free. It's first on Fox tonight. Mark.
It all has to do with a 2007 law that created a new system in the persecution of sex offenders, prosecution that is. That new system put the most dangerous criminals on the sex offender registry for life. But after a court ruling yesterday, some of those same criminals are the ones that may be taken off.
This is James Starkey, a level 3 sex offender, convicted of making lewd proposals or acts against a child. He's listed as on the sex offender registry for life, but he may soon be off that list.
They modified the Sex Offender Registration Act in 2007 that created what's called a level system.
Jerry Massey with the Department of Corrections says the act also increased the time sex offenders had to register from 10 years to their lifetime, depending on the level.
If you're level 3, it's required registration for life.
But for some, maybe not anymore. In a court ruling Wednesday, a judge ruled about 60 offenders may be taken off the list because they committed their crimes before 2007, and the previous law of 10 years should apply.
I cannot have what's called an ex post facto law.
David Slane is an attorney on this case. He says it's unconstitutional for a new law to apply to crimes that happened in the past.
They have to follow the law at the time of their case. Whatever that law was, that's what they have to follow.
There are several other cases this year that have upheld this ruling, including one at the Oklahoma Supreme Court.
Certain laws prohibit some sex offenders from coming to public areas like parks and schools. But if this ruling stands, they'd be free to come and go as they please.
All sex offenders who were convicted before 2007 could potentially get off the registry after 10 years, including James Starkey.
And they're going to hire lawyers and they're going to get off the list. That's the reality.
Whatever the courts say or whatever the law says is what we'll have to do or what we need to do.
The judge also ruled that if a level 3 sex offender from out of state comes to Oklahoma and their case was before 2007, they must register for 10 years, not a lifetime.
Good evening, I'm Jessica Shambach. Only on 5 tonight, a judge rules 60 sex offenders no longer have to register. We broke this story, and tonight we've learned this ruling could impact hundreds of others. Eyewitness News 5's Jessica Holloway is live. Jessica?
Well, the judge ruled on this man's case today, Christopher Luster, but about 60 others are benefiting from what this judge decided.
If you live in Oklahoma with kids and family, you may not want to live near a sex offender, but they have rights too.
I was supposed to register for 5 years.
In an Eyewitness News 5 investigation, we found there's a loophole in the law that makes it tough for those who've done the crime and done the time to become vindicated.
I would really like to be off this list. I mean, this affects all your life. I mean, every day. I mean, there's something that that this affects.
Today, a district judge handed down a new ruling that could make it nearly impossible to track sex offenders. The case? This man, Christopher Luster. Court documents say he was convicted in Texas in 1992. He pleaded guilty to sexual assault. He was not required to register as a sex offender. He moved to Oklahoma and eventually charged with failing to register. Lawyers are fighting for his rights, and today they won.
You simply can't change the rules in the middle of the game, and that's what they've done.
Luster's lawyer, David Slane, says the order will effectively remove 50 to 60 sex offenders, all with the stroke of a pen. He says everyone who's completed the required 10-year registration is now off the list if they have a case before 1999. He also says the judge ruled that if you're from out of state and you come to Oklahoma, you must register for 10 years from the time you arrive if your case is before 2007.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us. We begin here tonight with hundreds of sex offenders who will no longer have to register with the state sex offender registry.
An Oklahoma County judge made the ruling today, telling the state to remove many names immediately. News 9's Dana Herknicki joins us with tonight's top story. Dana?
Kelly and Amanda, this ruling will affect all sex offenders convicted before 2007. That's when the legislature changed the law, lengthening the amount of time offenders have to remain on the registry. Before, it was 10 years for everyone. Now, the worst offenders have to register for life.
It affects my entire life.
This man has been on the sexual offender registry since 1996 when he was convicted of urinating in public.
It's time-consuming, it's embarrassing.
When 2007 rolled around, he was supposed to be removed from the registry. But that's when a new law kicked in, putting him back on the list.
That year for Christmas, I got a note saying I got 15 more years.
Wednesday, a district judge said this man and about 60 others will have to be removed from the sex offender registry. The ruling comes after 2 appeals courts ruled it was unconstitutional to apply a punishment after the crime has been convicted.
I think there's literally going to be hundreds of sex offenders that will be able to be removed from the list.
David Slane represents a majority of the offenders in the recent case.
Many of them feel that they've done what the courts ask of them. They've complied with the law of registration for a long time, and they want to have a second chance at life.
Still, while some people won't have a problem with this man no longer registering, violent sexual offenders and pedophiles will also no longer be public record. And that's what concerns parents like Brooke Payton.
I think it's upsetting that myself as a parent won't be fully informed.
Sexual offenders taken off the list will also no longer be restricted from living near a park or school. And all that's something even this man finds a little disconcerting.
We need to keep track of these people.
Now, again, the current guidelines still apply to everyone convicted after 2007.
Since that time, David Slane has been a tireless advocate for sex offenders victimized by the system, and he has now won more than 100 cases.
82 more sex offenders will soon be off the registry.
Yeah, their attorney David Slane says a district judge ruled the sex offenders were unfairly placed on the sex offender registry. This stems from an appellate court ruling back in August. The court ruled that the Department of Corrections could not retroactively apply the stricter sex offender laws.
But getting off that list will not happen all by itself. To get your name off the registry, you must have a court order.
People have got to understand time is really of the essence. They have to move on this. They need to get their case filed. There is a bill being introduced at the Oklahoma legislature that would require everyone to have a court order. So we want to get as many of these cases in and get rulings on them as fast as possible.
Fact is, most attorneys will not work with sex offenders, but David Slane understands what you've been through.
Many of these people made mistakes many years ago. Some of them have registered for a really long time. Many of them have gone through counseling. They've got families, they've got good jobs, or they would like to have a good job, and they're moving on with their life. They're really not people that we need to be scared of.
So take it from people just like yourself who have hired David Slane.
He actually will fight for your rights opposed to turning his back and walking away. Now I feel like I can actually get up and move about. I can actually breathe. It's relief.
No one has more experience. David Slane has never lost a sex offender registry case. He is the one man who can give you your life back.
I don't think that there's a law office in town that would offer the same service, caring, and dependable person that you could deal with other than David Slane.